Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to
Gaming Friday. Yeah.
Gaming Friday indeed. And probably one of the better gaming Fridays because this one signals pretty much the end of 2016. When next you see Exity and myself on a Gaming Friday, it will be into 2017, which I hope is going to be a hell of a better year than 2016 has been for musicians and stars especially. Let's start with my initial thoughts on the Touch. Now I'm going to have a full video about this, but I just wanted to get some initial stuff out there. Now, I pretty much kept tight-lipped about the Touch because I wanted the damn things in my grubbies to be able to test them before I start commenting on them. Now, couple of things. Basically, I've tried pretty much rug scale to this point. So I still haven't orientated a camera behind me. I have just the two cameras in front to either side, which is essentially rug scale. Now, what that does not work for, 100% verified, is 360. And that's pretty self-explanatory. There's no freaking camera behind you. You're going to basically cause occlusion every time you turn around, and that is exactly what happened. Now, the game I used to test that was Arizona Sunshine, which is a fantastic Vive game that never, ever has you thinking about the controls. It just plays. Well, it just plays when it's not busy crashing, but that's another story. The game itself, the 360 aspect of it, is pretty fluid. Now, with the Touch controller, you are constantly aware of your positioning because anytime you turn around, I mean anytime you turn around, there's occlusion. Doesn't matter how far your hands are away from your chest, especially if you're a bigger lad like me, you're going to cause occlusion. There's going to be issues. So, with that said, it's pretty much mandatory. And I haven't started that testing yet, but mandatory, in my opinion, if you want to do 360 with these and an Oculus Rift, you have to have cameras on opposite sides, full stop, period. And that's basically all I'm going to say on that because I kind of kept my mouth shut. It didn't sound, you'd have people who felt very strongly about the Rift. And like I said, I'll mention this time and time again. I care about the game and the experience. The hardware is a means to that. I love my Rift and I love my Vive and I love my PlayStation VR. Are there things that feel more comfortable? Yeah. There's things I like about the Touch immediately and there's things I don't like. In the don't like category, the positioning of a gun. Holding a gun in Arizona Sunshine. To get that gun to aim puts your wrist in an awkward position that I don't feel on the Vive ever. And it's kind of supining your wrist just in an awkward position. If you've played it, you probably felt it. Whereas on the Vive, in Arizona Sunshine, lining up a headshot, just kind of putting the crosshairs on somebody, feels natural the whole time. It doesn't put your wrist into that unnatural position. So even with the camera being as fluid as the Vive, I honestly think I would prefer the Vive controller for Arizona Sunshine. The rest of the games I'm going to do that testing. I will let you know. But so far, rug scale, I like the Touch controllers. They feel good. And there's games that they work very well in. The Lab is one example. Works terrific. I wasn't able to get the tracking to misalign or misfire. The tracking was solid throughout, providing I was within clear shot of the camera, of course, right? Anytime you turn around, you cause occlusion, you get tracking issues. So, which is not something the typical Vive owner ever worries about because the default scenario is diagonally opposing, right? You have one behind you, one in front of you. And that is a good default position to have. The rug scale, not so much. If you want 360, that's not going to serve you well. You want a camera behind you, which is probably going to mean an extension cord, which may introduce some other issues. But I will know more on that once I test it. I haven't tested it yet, so I can't speak to that. But those are my initial thoughts. So If you're asking me for that first game, Arizona Sunshine, which do I prefer? My Vive controller, definitely. But I'm not going to penalize the Touch because of the camera situation, because I could have addressed that simply by putting it behind me, and I'll get to that, right? But feeling-wise, the Vive wins on that first game. All right, let's talk about the forums. So I've seen a couple of people asking about these. I had a rough version of the forums ready, revised it with Exity over the last couple of days, ready to launch it. I'm going to have it in the description below. You can go to the forums already, register. There's obviously things that are going to need to be tweaked, but I think at least I've got most of the forums up. There's a buy and sell, there's the game forums, there's a general forum.
If you guys have any suggestions for a forum you may want, let us know. We might throw it in there.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've got suggestions, indeed, let us know. And stuff like branding, I'll adjust that as the days go by. I just wanted to get it out there, and it's to that point where we can launch it officially. So there you have it. A couple of people I talked to about roles on that just messaged me through Steam. You guys know who you are. We can talk about that separately. All right, news-wise, Valve, very cool move. Dante Buckley, he's the lone developer behind the game Onward, which won a lot of people over when it was launched for the HTC Vive because it showed what one person could accomplish. Because we've seen lots of examples of one person or a pair of people and producing utter crap. It's nice and refreshing to see something that works and works well. And Dante's Onward works well, especially the locomotion system. That won a lot of people over initially because it just seemed so intuitive, and it worked. It worked really well. He's been offered an invite by Valve to basically join them in their offices for the month of January. That should do a lot for his development, give him access to some tools, additional exposure, maybe some contacts that he can network with for assistance down the road. Just a really cool, classy move by Valve to invite him into the studios for the month of January. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Next news story, the winners announced by UploadVR for those nominees that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire list. There's literally a metric crap ton of them. You can check that all out in the link below. Just going to go through some of the genre categories and the best of the platforms, right? So let's talk about the best racing game. That was Dirt Rally. Best horror game winner, A Chair in a Room. Best action adventure game winner, Vanishing Realms. Best puzzle game winner, Superhot VR. And I still haven't played that. That's next on my list. See how I feel about that, winning that category. Best shooter winner, speaking of which, Onward. Most surprising new game winner, Onward. And now we've got some categories basically on the technology itself. So best Rift game winner went to The Unspoken, which is that hand gesture casting game. Best Vive game winner, Arizona Sunshine. I think that's definitely a deserving award, and so far the platform where that game shines best, absolutely. Best PlayStation VR game winner, Riggs, a game that I own and yet have not played enough of. Definitely got to get to that. Best VR game of the year. This one a little surprising, but I can get behind it. Arizona Sunshine. And then the most anticipated upcoming VR game of 2017 winner, Star Trek Bridge Crew. And I think that would be a given pretty much. What I was disappointed with, and I'm just being honest, guys, is, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I'll mention it again with the story. It's a little more appropriate for that one anyways. All right. The other week, I announced a delay from IMAX. They announced a delay for their IMAX VR centers, and we weren't sure why the delay at the time. Now it kind of makes sense. They have entered into an agreement with HTC Vive to not only feature the HTC Vive units in addition to the Star VR units, but also Vive VR games. So very cool. looks like they've wanted to expand the role to not just be about experiences, but a full-on arcade-style atmosphere. And I've said it before, I think that is the perfect fit. It's honestly what theaters have been missing the last couple of decades, is the arcade side of the equation. Something to do in the lobbies, worth doing. And I'm sorry, but throwing balls into holes with different points just doesn't cut it. That's not an arcade experience, in my opinion. Next up, Vive at CES. So there's a little bit of disappointment because there was initial rumors that Valve, HTC, were going to announce the Vive 2. Now, I felt it was premature. I still feel that would be premature. I think that's something you do at the tail end of the year, going into 2018 perhaps. Not now, not this early. Thankfully, they decided not to do that, or maybe never were going to, and it was just rumors. But either way, they do have a showing, and it's going to be 30 plus games / experiences that they're showing at the CES event. Now, when I said earlier, I was a little disappointed. This is a better story to express my disappointment. I'm going to read the titles for 9 games that they're showcasing, and then I'll talk about why I'm a little disappointed. So let's talk about these titles. Arcade Saga, Front Defense, Knockout League, Mind Show, The Music Room, The Nest, Racket, ROM Extraction, Star Trek Bridge Crew. Okay. Most of these titles are titles that we knew about in 2016. Why are we not seeing games on this list showcasing 2017? Are we really talking about the same games from what will soon be last year into the new year? I would have hoped, and I anticipated, we would see a bevy. And a bevy is more than 1 or 2 titles showcasing Vive, Rift, PlayStation to really get us excited about 2017. And I have yet to see that. I'm seeing a lot of recycling. We've been talking about Bridge Crew forever. Don't get me wrong. Fantastic potential for that game, but it's a known quantity. I was hoping for something new to get excited about, and I haven't seen that. Doesn't mean some of these other games aren't going to be great, but let's face it, we've talked about most of these titles well into 2016. So, gotta be honest, that's where I'm a little disappointed. I would have loved to have seen something to get really excited about. Doesn't mean it's not coming for future events, but now would have been the time to spring at least some of that, just to build up some anticipation. But nothing to be seen, I'm afraid. Along those lines anyways. All right, next story, VR in 2016. The PlayStation VR and that mainstream dream of virtual reality. Really good article on UploadVR. And personally, I see 2017 being a really big year for the PlayStation. And here's an example of what I like about the PlayStation. One thing they have been absolutely crystal focused on is their vision of what they wanted to roll out, what they ultimately rolled out, and what they're sticking with. It's been a consistent vision and narrative throughout the whole year of 2016. Absolutely. We look at the final product, it's exactly what they said it would be. There's some hiccups along the way, absolutely. Some issues with the tracking, probably not as good as they could have been, given we're working with a little bit of older technology. Most of us expected tracking wouldn't be their strong suit. But compare that now to the Vive and Rift, both companies which changed their narrative multiple times throughout the year, especially Oculus. Initially, gamepad was good enough. Then it was, oh, we can do that too. We've got the touch coming. Then it was, you know what? We really don't need room scale. We think it's more about standing or seated only. But sure, we can do that too. Here's Guardian. And there's nothing wrong with that. Companies can continue to innovate. But from a marketing point of view, it was, or there were clear pivot points where you could see Oculus changing the narrative and adjusting kind of midstream, right? Again, nothing wrong with that. But contrast that to Sony, which had that consistent vision throughout. And I think that's going to benefit them because now we've got this messy situation. Look, the Vive and PlayStation both have the motion controller, the track controllers, part and parcel with the bundle. We still haven't seen Rift market a bundle solution with the touch controllers, which I really think they should be doing for 2017. Start including that bundled in. If you want that 1-to-1 ratio, or come close to it, it's got to be something they entertain at some point. They can't keep it separate like this, or you are going to create that rift between gamepad and touch. And from a game development point of view, it's going to be hard to convince devs to go for one if the numbers aren't there. So hopefully we see that. And that would be another change of the narrative, agreed. But I think that would be a necessary good one for them to undertake. So when you look at the year in terms of consistency, and let's talk about Vive too. Let's not leave them out of this. They certainly had their share of issues. Quality control, first and foremost. The supply chain issues that admittedly Rift had a bit more of, they certainly didn't escape from. They had some supply chain issues of their own. The Vive did. But they're not beyond changing the narrative either. And part of that is evolution. If you look at these new version of their controllers, clearly influenced by aspects of the touch. Can't be denied. They are. And we're going to see that. That's just a natural thing, the leapfrogging of each other. But that's where we go back to Sony, the one piece that you can give them. And part of that is they're not competing with Rift and Vive directly. So you could say they don't really care to the same level. They're not competing against them. So they don't care about having to not have the best tracking solution. They've been consistent throughout. And that'll be interesting to see how they build on that foundation into 2017, 2016 as well. Very cool. New Lighthouse tracked VR gun controller from Ilium VR. This uses the Lighthouse tracking tech that Valve had released directly. What I like about this solution is the fact that it uses your existing Vive controller. You're basically putting the controller at the end. But unlike a lot of our do-it-yourself solutions, which, let's face it, didn't look too inspiring, especially mine, looked pretty damn horrible, you're buying something extra that has some functionality. The danger is always, and it's the exact same thing I was just talking about with the Rift, when you don't have that 1-to-1 ratio, controller to console, or controller to bundle in this case, devs are going to be reluctant to develop for it. What this company has done correctly, and that's Ilium, is they've entered agreements with a couple of companies going into this to say, look, they're going to be retro patched to include functionality for their gun. So while you put the Vive controller at the front, it's going to introduce stuff like recoil. You're going to get actual recoil. Magazines that work by actually putting them in and taking them out. So you don't have that empty magazine component that you had in-game. So the companies, Vertigo Games, Arizona Sunshine, Inverse Studios, The Nest, both of those games will be retro patched to accommodate the Athena. There's a video in the link below. That video shows an older gun called the Persuader. So similarities, but the Athena does look a lot better. There are pictures of that. I'll try to have one up. But that's the way to go about it. If you don't have that 1-to-1 ratio, at least they've got the agreements. Hopefully that amounts to something. All right, guys, that's it for the news. Cheers as always. Enjoy, hopefully, your own gaming Friday. Have a kick-ass weekend. We will catch you on the VR flip side.